Our second tactical breakdown of the summer as Arsenal's transfer moves finally begin to reach higher gears. I'm very happy to be talking today about Mikel Merino and hearing all about him from an expert you are all very much familiar with. This is today's Arsenal Tactical Breakdown Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown Show, the show in which we break down the Arsenal players that have been linked with the club in a statistical and analytical way with the help of some expert insight. And I'm very happy to welcome back to the channel, it's Spanish football expert and football commentator, Alvaro Romeo. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Very well, Tom. Very well. It's good to see you in good form.
Thank you, mate. I mean, it's not been bad considering the heat. We were just discussing off air, weren't we, how uncomfortable it is. I was saying I know that you're obviously from northern Spain, as you remind me, but even so, as an Englishman, it makes me feel better knowing that a Spaniard is still finding it too hot.
It's not my case, man. Not my case. Look, I spent a couple of weeks in Greece in July, and I tell you what, I was happy to be back in London. I mean,
Really?
the temperatures were scorching hot in there. Yeah, it's not for me. Not for me. High temperatures are not for me. I'm more suited to the miserable, lovely conditions of the north of Europe.
Well, I'm glad that we're in the same boat there, mate. But the transfer window is hotting up as well for Arsenal, and both incomings and outgoings as well. We've seen Ricardo Calafiori, of course, arrive this summer in a very exciting deal. We're seeing some emotional exits. Emil Smith-Rowe moving closer to the exit door. In fact, that deal to Fulham is all but confirmed. Just an announcement is awaiting in that end of things. And it is actually Smith-Rowe's exit, which has kind of prompted Arsenal to step things up in their pursuit of Mikel Merino, which is who we're, of course, here to talk about today. So just to get your initial reaction to Arsenal targeting Merino, and I'm curious as to your thoughts, because he's been obviously with Sociedad for quite some time, and there's been obviously whispers for a number of years about if he might move to a bigger club. It's seemingly it could be Arsenal. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I believe, number one, if this happens, it will be very good for Arsenal because they will get a midfielder on his prime. He is a dual winner. In fact, I was checking some numbers the other day. No one won more aerial duels than him as a midfielder in European football in the big five leagues last season. And also, he's quite technical. He's got a decent scoring ability as well. His numbers are there. And after having won the European Championship, I guess that he feels very confident as well. He was important for Spain coming off the bench, scoring that goal against Germany. And he knows the league as well. He knows the Premier League. It's not that he failed in the Premier League. He was young when he played for Newcastle, but I think that he was good. Everyone could see that the talent is there. And at Real Sociedad, that talent has crystallized. And one of the reasons why Real Sociedad played Champions League football last season, it's mainly because of Mikel Merino and his terrific output in midfield.
And it is obviously a midfielder that Arsenal, to my understanding, were always prioritising during this window. It was always going to be a window where Arsenal were looking to kind of raise the floor more than up the ceiling. I mean, last summer we saw Declan Rice arrive, Kai Havertz arrive, of course, Yuri and Timber arrive. This window has been about bringing in competitive options to what they already have to broaden the quality in the group. And he'd be joining a midfield that includes, of course, Declan Rice, as I've mentioned, but Kai Havertz has played in that left centre midfielder role. You've got Ødegaard there. Ethan Nwaneri, who's had a fantastic pre-season, is looking to make a breakthrough this season at Arsenal as well. Thomas Partey was linked with an exit, but from the moment, it seems he might be staying. You've got Jorginho, of course, there too. There's a lot of quality of depth there. Do you see him fitting into the central part of the midfield in the same way that he fits into Sociedad, with the player like Zubimendi, for instance, just behind him?
Look, I think that he can fit at Arsenal. He will definitely be able, number one, to give a break to Martin Ødegaard because last season he played pretty much every single minute. And he's a player who is not going to be complacent with being a number 12 footballer in the team. I think that he will try to become one of the starters, and he's going to raise the competitiveness inside the team, that's for sure. And I do believe that he will be a very good addition. Last season, I could feel that sometimes Arsenal was a bit light in midfield because Thomas was enduring that injury. Fabio Vieira is obviously a player that he has his ups and downs, but he's nowhere near the quality of Mikel Merino yet. And yeah, I think he has definitely a place in the squad, but Mikel Merino is one of those footballers that if he is in the team, he's gonna make Mikel Arteta have his doubts, because Mikel Arteta may have in his mind that Declan Rice playing with Odegaard and perhaps Kai Havertz is the best possible midfield. But on the other hand, there are games in which you have to be a little bit more rocky, and then Mikel Merino will be the first man. There are some games in which you have to keep the possession. There are some games in which you need to resort to epicity to win the game in a set piece. And Mikel Arteta loves set pieces as well. And Mikel Merino is very good at that too. So I think he definitely has a place in Arsenal.
You mentioned that you'd looked into some of his numbers. I've been doing the same. In particular, duels, he ranks exceptionally highly. He's tenacious in trying to get into those tackles, but also as a box-to-box type that he can play that kind of number 8 role. Does the work defensively, but offensively, very impressive as well. I mean, ranking in the 93rd percentile of top 5 league central midfielders for touches in the penalty area, 2.89 per 90, but and non-penalty goals as well, 94th percentile for players in his position. He turned up with the heroics for Spain, of course, in the Euros as well, and unsurprisingly, he ranks in the 99th percentile for aerial duels. Mikel Arteta has improved the physicality and the height and the aerial presence of that Arsenal team since his arrival, and you would assume that a player of Merino's profile kind of fits what Arteta's been going for in terms of those midfielders.
Yes, definitely. And there is another thing that we shouldn't let go. Is the fact that Mikel Merino has played for Imanol Alguacil, a manager who prefers attacking football, but he knows about cynical football as well. So basically, Real Sociedad over the last 5-6 years in La Liga has been the side that has made more tactical faults. And I think that is also something that Mikel Arteta will appreciate because Mikel Merino is not naive. So apart from all these qualities that we're speaking about, Mikel Merino has played attacking football in a team that is very quick making that tactical fault to stop the opponent from having a counter-attack. So in a way, he is suited to Arsenal style. I will say that. It's not that Arsenal and Real Sociedad resemble exactly each other, but Mikel Merino knows the rudiments of his work very well. And I think that he has done things that at Arsenal will be very, very welcome. Like, for example, chasing for the ball as if there was no tomorrow when you lose it.
Yeah, I mean, that famous phrase of Arteta is if you lose a duel, you run, as that Amazon documentary showed everybody in that famous clip from the Nottingham Forest FA Cup defeat. And duels are, as we've already mentioned, a big part of Mikel Merino's game. Now, Arsenal fans like context. They like getting kind of a reference point. So I've brought up some other midfielders that I thought are appropriate in some ways to compare him to, because Rice has played in the left 8 role for Arsenal, which is where I would see Merino obviously potentially rivaling him for, but playing with Rice is definitely an option for Arsenal as well. I think I heard you mention his potential for him to even rotate with Odegaard at times as well, if Odegaard wanted to be rested. Fabian Ruiz has also been linked to Arsenal and played obviously in the midfield for Spain during the European Championships. He's as I said, he's been linked with Arsenal as well, and there is some similarities in the position, I suppose. Then you got Bruno Guimaraes, who I think a lot of fans would say is their dream central midfield signing, but is very much an unlikely one this summer. So I thought comparing the looks between now, Ruiz, of course, isn't a mainstay in the PSG team, so minutes-wise is not playing as much, whereas Rice and Guimaraes have played significantly more than actually both of the Spanish contemporaries in this bracket. But in terms of goals and assists, Rice and Guimaraes are putting up 15 goal contributions across the domestic leagues, and Merino came up with 5 goals and 3 assists last season. Is there a context, do you think, in the team that he's playing at the moment? What's the context with Sociedad? How impressive are they in La Liga? And would you expect a switch to Arsenal to come with it an uptake in the numbers that we see?
I would definitely expect that, because on Real Sociedad, this season or last season, to be more precise, they lowered down their level a little bit. They went from qualifying 4th to not qualifying for the Champions League. Yeah. It wasn't Mikel Merino's fault. It was down to a poor recruitment from Real Sociedad, especially they didn't know how how to replace Sorloth, a striker who left to Villarreal, and then they brought Andres Silva. That didn't work at all. Mikel Oyarzabal still suffered a few injuries and all that. But I wouldn't blame Mikel Merino. I think that if he goes to a side like Arsenal, a side that scores easily 40 goals more than Real Sociedad in all competitions in a season, Mikel Merino will naturally and automatically improve his numbers. I have no doubt about that. I can see Mikel Merino easily scoring 7 or 8 goals in a team like Arsenal, in a league, I'm saying, and probably giving 3 or 4 more assists than he did for Real Sociedad.
There you go. It is important context. And, Sociedad as well brought in Kieran Tierney last season on loan, and obviously injuries affected his, and they went out and they signed, was it the Atletico Madrid left back in January because Tierney's injuries were...
Haaland,
yes, indeed, because they were so frustrating. And that in itself, there's a good relationship between the two clubs, between Sociedad and Arsenal. We've seen Tierney move. We've seen Nacho Monreal. There's a really good deal that went down that saw him move in that direction that was really financially favourable for the Spanish club as well. So the relationship between the two clubs is definitely favourable for the Gunners. We talked a little about how he is in the attacking areas. He does like to take a shot. He averages over a shot, 1 shot per game, which is much higher than the others on this list, and touched in the penalty area as well, ranked higher than all the others, 2.75 touched in the opposition penalty area. The next highest is Guimaraes at 2.07. But the biggest concern Arsenal fans have been raising with me, Alvaro, is his passing, because in terms of accuracy, he ranks quite considerably lower than the others. He has a 76.2% pass completion. Now, you compare that to Rice and Fabian, who have 88.9 and 89.2 respectively. Guimaraes slightly lower than that, 83.9. But is this a concern, or is this more stylistic? Is this because he plays riskier passes and therefore that leads to him not being so accurate, or is it an area of his game that is weaker?
Look, he definitely doesn't have the accuracy of Fabian Ruiz or Declan Rice, that's for sure. But I do believe that partially one of the reasons why his accuracy went down a little bit is because David Silva had to retire. A year ago, literally a year ago, David Silva, who was playing for Real Sociedad, suffered an ACL injury, and he decided to call it a day, hang the boots, and then Mikel Merino started taking more creative responsibilities than maybe he should. And maybe he started taking more risks as well.
Right.
So, still, he's a footballer that if he's well surrounded and if he doesn't have to take a massive risk, he will guarantee possession as well. I wouldn't be too concerned about that stat of Mikel Merino. I think that his passing is pretty decent. But of course, you're comparing him with two passing monsters like Fabian Ruiz and Declan Rice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that showcases in some of the other statistics that we've got in terms of his passes into the box and passes into the final third as well. We've seen that 4.42 passes into the final third per 90 is higher than that of actually Fabian Ruiz, quite interestingly. So it's not as high as Rice's 6.7 or Guimaraes' 5.07. But again, it's so interesting, isn't it, when we talk about context and stats. I'm a big advocate of stats, you may be unsurprised to hear. But I think the context surrounding the numbers always provides that little extra bit of an edge to what we see. Tackles, we talked about it before, 1.56 tackles, 1 per 90, higher than Rice. And Rice is known, for how good he is going into those battles with other players, higher than Guimaraes as well. Fabian, actually, his numbers surprised me, 1.73 tackles, 1 per 90, rather impressive. And then we move into slightly other territories of errors leading to goal. He has had errors in his game that have led to goal, 3 compared to Rice's 0 and Guimaraes' 0 and Fabian's 2 as well. But I think overall, when you look at these numbers, Rice is a player that cost £105 million. Guimaraes is a player that will cost £100 million for anybody that wants him. And Arsenal are potentially looking at a deal for Mikel Merino at around, the talks are between around 30 million, I've heard, is kind of what's being spoken about potentially. So overall, in conclusion, a good deal for Arsenal, we're thinking, if this happens.
I will say yes. Look, there are some numbers there that show that Mikel Merino have things to improve, or that last season he was far from perfect. But on the other hand, he's a footballer with a lot of command. I think that he wants the ball. He doesn't hide in the game. And he offers a very good variety of shots. His defending abilities, going forward, he's pretty decent. And his aerial power is something that Arsenal can benefit from. The only thing is that his contract is running in 2025. Real Sociedad is preparing an offer for him to stay, and apparently Real Sociedad are gonna make him the highest paid player in the squad. I don't know if this is gonna tempt Mikel Merino to stay at Real Sociedad or not, but the opportunity is there. And I think that Mikel Merino knows the Premier League, as I said before, and he will be a very good addition for Arsenal, because Arsenal is a fully functioning team as well. And this is very important. When you get into a fully functioning team, the adaptation is easier. The adaptation is way easier.
Absolutely. We've got just over 5 minutes left. I want to open up the floor to our chat box as well, that they've been listening very intently. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. You can find Alvaro on Twitter at Alvaro_Romeo. You can see it on your screen there. So make sure you follow him. And any podcasts coming up soon, Alvaro, with the boys?
My Spanish podcast is coming on the 15th of August, and I'm going to do 70 from the start of the Premier League season until the end. And then you'll hear me a lot in TalkSport this year. Not so much in the Athletic.
Good stuff, though. It's going to be good to hear lots of Spanish football. I mean, and obviously not just Spanish football, but the Spanish translations of a lot of Premier League games, correct? Is that going to be happening this year?
A bit of that too. Yeah, of course.
Good stuff. Let's jump into the chat box then. Maximir says, hi, Tom and Alvaro. Is Moreno someone on the lines of Xhaka? We missed Xhaka last season. Are they similar types of players? Oh, have we lost Alvaro? I think we may have lost him. What a timing. I mean, it's a lovely face. There he's back. We've got you back. We're back. Sorry, you cut out for a second. To be fair, if there was ever a moment, mate, where you could kind of the internet would dip out, it was a perfect moment for it to dip out. It was very flattering of yourself. But Maximir is asking, is Xhaka and Moreno similar in their style?
I don't that there are many similarities. I really don't think so.
Fair enough. I think we're just losing Alvaro again. I'm conscious of the time as well, so I know Alvaro's got to go shoot somewhere. So Alvaro, I will, if you can still hear me, your contribution was fantastic for the amount of time that we could hear you. But the internet connection has seemingly just dropped, which is a shame because we were answering some great questions. But Alvaro, I know you're maybe just back. I'm conscious of your internet connection probably losing us again. So I just want to quickly say thank you. I'll tackle some of the questions before we wrap up. But thank you, mate, for your time. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, my connection hasn't been the greatest. But if you want to keep on going, we can give it a try. Otherwise, I say goodbye to everyone.
We can give it a try. You are seemingly back. So, yeah, I heard your answer to the Xhaka question. So we'll go to Vesman, who says, is there a possibility that Arteta might use this depth, should we acquire it, to begin rotations earlier in games? Because obviously Arteta has been a little bit criticised for not substituting players early enough in fixtures.
Definitely. I think that last season Arsenal learned a lot about having to deal with two very tough competitions. And I think that Mikel Merino will be exactly that kind of player. In fact, I think that Mikel Arteta wasn't really counting on footballers like Smith Rowe or Reece Nelson. And if you let these players go to bring the likes of Mikel Merino, obviously you are improving your squad. And I think Mikel Arteta will probably try to have as many good players so he can rotate as much as he can, and earlier in the games too. Yes.
Rancid here asking, how would you describe his character as a person? I believe he has taken on the armband a few times with Sociedad. Is that correct?
He's a leader. Yeah, he's a leader. He, when he speaks, he seems to be very articulate. I think he got a very good education because his father was a footballer too. Therefore, he went to good schools. And he is confident in two languages as well, and I think that he's a very nice guy. I mean, from what I could gather from former teammates that have played with him and all that, no one had ever a problem with him. He's a very nice guy.
Lovely stuff. And the last one from Paul and P Sharp. These kind of combined together in terms of his injury history. I'll do a quick Google of that as well, just to get that updated for people in more specific terms. But P Sharp's asking about his injury record. And Paul is saying, is he the type that can play for 90 plus minutes like Rice does, or does he run out of stamina somewhat and needs to be substituted? Is he like a marathon runner, or is he more of a, will give you a good 60 minutes and then is typically brought off in the second half? Did you hear me, Mikel? Alvaro, did you hear me?
Yes,
I don't know.
I can hear you. I think that yes, yeah. Can you hear me too?
Yeah, I can. I can. Just go for the. You can see the question at the bottom of your screen. I won't. I won't bore you by repeating it.
No, no, no. Sorry about that. No, I think that his stamina is more than good, really. Of course, when you move to the Premier League, you have to adapt to the rigors of the Premier League as well. The games are pacier, but he has it, and I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And when it comes to the injury record, look, if we Google it, we'll give the perfect 100% injury record of Mikel Merino, but nothing big that I can recall has happened to him. I think that he doesn't have any big muscular thing. He has never broken a knee or an ankle or anything like that. He has stayed quite healthy.
Just having a quick look on transfer marks as well. Last season, he missed just 2 games for Sociedad because of a calf issue. Season before that, just 4 games. Season before that, he did miss 6 games because of a hamstring injury. So overall, I mean, 2021, he didn't miss any. So yeah, a very good record from that wise. I'm not going to tempt fate any further with the connection, Alvaro. So we'll bring today's show to a close. But what you have offered us is some fantastic insight into the player, and given I think fans of the player and those that didn't perhaps know too much about him a much more greater in-depth knowledge of him. So I much appreciate your time. I'm sure you'll be back on the show with maybe a wired internet connection next time, and it might be slightly better. But I really appreciate your time, mate, and thank you so much for that.
It's been my pleasure, Tom. Take care. Thanks for all the questions, and I'll see you very soon. Bye bye.
Absolutely. Thank you to Alvaro. Of course, there's a slight delay, which I'm sure the listeners will forgive us for again. But you can catch, of course, all of Alvaro's stuff on social media at Alvaro_Romeo on Twitter. And I'll, of course, leave a link to that in the tweet that I've put out already. We'll be back with further shows over the course of the season and the summer. More players to be linked to Arsenal, that's for sure. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing who Arsenal end up getting through the doors. But Mikel Merino, we know plenty more about now. And I'm looking forward to seeing if indeed he is the player that ends up being the man to take on Arsenal's midfield challenge. A massive thank you once again to Alvaro, who I think has finally dipped out with his internet connection going. But we got the bulk, and that's what matters. We got the bulk of what he had to say, which is fantastic. So thank you again. I'll be back with you. Maybe not tomorrow at 8 a.m. It depends on how rise and shine I am after tonight's game, of course, but do appreciate everything that you've given to us as a channel, and we will see you again very soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.